All right, Dan, let's talk about the sin committed by Ham.
Yes.
What do we remember about this story?
From what I remember, Ham caught his father Noah uh, drunk and naked,
Sure.
and because he was the first to see him, his whole lineage was cursed for eternity.
Right. And I remember when we recorded our episode on that, there were a lot of questions about why such an outsized punishment seemed to have been given for what seems to be kind of an accidental ho-hum of a sin.
Right.
Yeah. So I have a theory
Okay.
about what happened inside of the tent.
Mhm.
And the classic theories, like the top three choices, are one, which is what most people think, which is he saw his father naked, and that in itself was a problem. Second theory is that he dishonored his father by seeing him naked
We talked about that one.
and not covering him or taking care of him in his drunken state.
Right.
There's a third theory, which is often floated, that there was something sexual done to Noah.
What?
Something sexual, or there's even a theory that he was castrated.
Wait, Noah was castrated?
Well, he wasn't. I'm saying that
Or Ham was castrated?
that's a theory that has been floated in Jewish history.
Wait, who was castrated?
Noah. Well, nobody
I know, but
nobody was castrated. I'm saying the theory is that Ham castrated Noah,
Oh,
his own
you
father.
needed to say that one.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting.
Anyways, there's a fourth,
Yeah, there needs to be.
and it's been around a bit, but it didn't get traction, I don't think,
Okay.
in our society until probably the 70s. But I think it's the best option, and that option is that Ham slept and or raped his mother, Noah's wife, which is an odd conclusion based on the text.
What?
Right, so we'll read it again.
Yeah, you better read that again.
And Noah began to be a farmer, or it says in other texts, he was a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. Then he drank of the wine and was drunk, and became uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, went backwards, and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, they did not see their father's nakedness. So Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done to him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants. He shall be to his brethrens. So the first thing I think we need to talk about is, what does it mean that he saw his father naked?
Right, I don't think it means you castrated him.
And luckily, this is one phrase in the Bible that does turn up often, 54 times to be exact.
Okay.
So we're actually able to see what the phrase means. It's a Hebrew idiom.
The saw?
To see or to uncover a person's nakedness
Okay.
has a very specific meaning. We're going to look first at Leviticus 20 and Leviticus 18.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do 20 first, and we're going to read verses 11 and then 17 through 21.
Okay.
The man who lies with his father's wife has uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall surely be put to death. If a man takes his sister, his father's daughter, or his mother's daughter, and sees her nakedness, and she sees his nakedness, it is a wicked thing, and they shall be cut off in the sight of their people. He has uncovered his sister's nakedness. He shall bear his guilt. If a man lies with a woman during her sickness and uncovers her nakedness, he has exposed her flow, and she has uncovered the flow of her blood. Both of them shall be cut off from their people. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, nor of your father's sister, for that would uncover his near of kin. They shall bear their guilt. If a man lies with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness, and they shall bear their sin, and they shall die childless. If a man takes his brother's wife, it is an unclean thing. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. They shall be childless. So far in Leviticus 20, it seems that to uncover or to see someone's nakedness is obviously a sexual act. That's quite obvious. We're going to look through a couple verses in Leviticus 18.
Uh-huh.
Not all of them, because there's even more of them in 18 than there were in 20.
And we want to save something for Leviticus.
That's right. So here's Leviticus 18:6. None of you shall approach anyone who is near of kin to him and uncover his nakedness. I am the Lord. The nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother you shall not uncover. She is your mother, you shall not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's wife you shall not uncover. It is your father's nakedness. And we're going to stop there.
Right there.
Because that's the important thing. We've had a couple passages here.
That's called the smoking gun.
That have touched on it. And I'll give you the first one. If a man lies with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say his uncle's wife's nakedness. And then in 21, if a man takes his brother's wife, it is an unclean thing. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness for sleeping with his brother's wife, right? And then if you couldn't get any more on the nose, in 18:8, the nakedness of your father's wife you shall not uncover. It is your father's nakedness. There seems to be going on here some language that is affiliated with, we'll say, ownership or headship, where a married woman is subject to her husband. An unmarried woman is subject either to her father or her brother if her father is deceased.
Okay, so her nakedness is his nakedness because he owns her.
Essentially.
Got it.
Right. So when we see the phrase that Noah's nakedness was seen, it because Noah was married, and because we know that Ham had a mother,
right,
we have to conclude that Noah's wife was the one who was actually seen naked. And here's something interesting. In the passages through Leviticus and through the rest of the Old Testament, to uncover or to see a person's nakedness, when it refers to a married woman, in every single instance, it's actually the man's nakedness that is uncovered, even though the thing happened to the woman. There's not a single case of that happening to a married woman where it said her nakedness was uncovered. There are instances of unmarried women where her nakedness is revealed, and it speaks specifically of her own nakedness. But none married women yet have possession over their own nakedness, according to the text. And there are no instances in Leviticus either of male on male nakedness being uncovered. Whenever it refers to a male sleeping sinfully with another male, it doesn't use the term uncover or to see the nakedness. It says to lie with. A man shall not lie with another man as he would with a woman. So
why is it different, the verbiage?
Personally, I think the verbiage is different because they were written at different time periods and had different authors. Nevertheless,
that makes sense.
I think it's also because we're talking about an idiom here, and the idiom has a very specific usage, whereas to lie with a person is more generic. Does that make sense? Like when we read Adam knew his wife Eve, that is an idiom. We have to know that it's an idiom, or else the passage doesn't make sense. It's a very specific term, even though it does have a generic usage. You know, you could know something.
Right.
I think this is very true as well. To uncover someone's nakedness or to see someone's nakedness is a very specific idiom that refers to exactly what we're talking about.
So why did they use that idiom? Because it was just common knowledge back then? Because
what you don't want to do often is say the dirty parts out loud. That's why in the text we don't see, like, you know, Adam had sex with his wife. You know, they always couch it in language that is prudish. And that's in keeping with what we know about Jewish religious practices. In fact, even in some of the Levitical laws, when God is giving them instructions for how to practice, they have undergarments made of linen so that their genitals are not exposed to the altar.
Oh,
So they're very prudish in terms of how they view the body. Of course, we see that in Adam and Eve. They immediately needed clothes to be covered up.
right.
Right. So there's definitely a feeling of shame that's happening here. Now, what's even more interesting is they go into the tent where Noah is to cover him up, the brothers. Now, why in the world would anyone sleep with their mother?
Well, before that, so are they just using the word tent because they don't want to say what actually happened?
Well,
It's like the prudish language that we're supposed to understand what it means.
no, this is not an idiom. In this particular case, they're referring to events that took place at a location. That location just happened to be the tents that they dwelt in.
Oh, you meant actual tents.
Actual tents in this particular
Wow,
case.
I thought you meant something different.
You thought that was dirty?
I did, yeah.
Well, anyways,
Okay.
with a new frame of mind.
Yeah.
I mean, believe you me, something dirty happened in those tents.
Yeah, but
That is for sure.
okay. Yeah.
But let's talk about why the dirty happened,
Okay.
right? So one of the questions that always arises is, if a sexual act happened in the tent, what would be the purpose? Would it just be lust? I don't think so. I think what happened was for a purpose, and I think we find the answer in the book of 2 Samuel. There's a really interesting case where David has a son named Absalom, and he tries to steal the throne. And he actually leads a rebellion against his father. And
Okay.
at one point in time, the rebellion seems to be successful, but he doesn't have the support of the people. So he gets advice, and listen to the advice and what happens. Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, "Give advice as to what we should do to gain the people's, to get authority over the people who still wanted to follow his father."
Who's Ipsithel?
Ahithophel?
Yes.
I actually forget his role in the story.
Okay. So
He's probably an advisor, but
okay.
it's irrelevant to what we're reading right now.
Right.
And Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Go into your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep the house, and all Israel will hear that you are abhorred by your father. Then the hands of all who are with you will be strong." So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the top of the house, and Absalom went into his father's concubines in all the sight of Israel.
So he's saying, pitch a tent, go have sex with your father's concubines in front of everybody.
As a show that you are now in charge.
Okay. Okay. Oh. Okay.
Right. You ever watch the UFC and they're like talking smack during the weigh-ins? And I've seen on more than one occasion where someone says, I'm going to beat you into the ground and then sleep with your wife.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the final act of dominance. It's like the highest you could go, right?
Yeah, actually, that makes sense. Yeah.
So there's another instance where David is being reprimanded by the prophet Nathan. And there is something Nathan says to David that is really interesting. I won't preface it because you'll catch it. Then Nathan said to David, "You are the man. Thus says the Lord God of Israel. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave you your master's house and your master's wives into your keeping, and gave you the house of Israel and Judah." Interesting here. When the kingship is transferred from Saul to David, David takes on the wives of the previous king.
That's crazy.
So it seems to me that here Ham is putting together friggin' rebellion.
Yeah.
He's trying to set himself up as current, only a few people, but the leader of the world. Right?
Yeah, there aren't that many, right?
8 of them. But clearly he wants to be on top.
Of the 8 of them.
And his mother.
Well, where was he in the pecking order?
I think it says the youngest son.
So he would have been the Probably bottom rung of everything, right?
Yeah, the youngest son, probably whipped up on by his brothers. And then one day he says, I'll show you. Sleeps with his mother, leaves the tent, tells his brothers what he did, which makes sense if you're trying to rearrange the pecking order.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So now you're clearing up the issue of, well, why would he tell his brothers? He told his brothers because there's a new world order, baby, and it's got ham on top.
Okay.
I think there's another thing that is cleared up by this particular theory. And the last thing that's cleared up is why Ham is not cursed necessarily, but Canaan is cursed. And this is not apparent in the text. You have to make some assumptions. But what if Canaan is the product of the rape between Ham and his mother? He is now an illegitimate son, and the whole lineage needs to be cursed because of this sinful union. And you would think, well, that sounds much more fitting because Egypt wasn't cursed. That's one of Ham's children. Put was not cursed. That's one of Ham's children. They're not pictured as good people groups, but they're not cursed. Only Canaan is cursed among Ham's children because maybe Canaan was the offspring of that sinful union. And there's another example that we could look to, and that is Abraham. When Abraham sleeps with his maidservant in order to have a child because he doesn't believe the promise is being fulfilled, Ishmael is essentially cursed.
Yeah.
Ishmael didn't do anything wrong necessarily, right?
Right.
But nonetheless, because of the union between Abraham and the maidservant, his lineage is cursed. So it says in Genesis 16:12, he, Ishmael, I inserted Ishmael, will be a wild donkey of a man. His hands will be against everybody, and everyone's hand will be against him. And he will live in hostility towards his brothers. There is another case.
I guess we know why he would be living in hostility with his brothers if that was the case, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting case that happens with one of the sons of Israel that is more in line with what we see in the Noah story, where Reuben sleeps with one of his father's wives. This is Genesis 35:22. And it came to pass while Israel dwelt in the land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. And then later in the story, when he's on his deathbed, he essentially gives a soft-hearted curse to Reuben. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, you shall not excel, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it, and he went up to my couch. Now, the lineage is being cursed, not because they did anything wrong here, but because it's a generational curse because of the sinful union. And to me, I think that clears up the story of what in the world happened inside of the tent. Any thoughts?
My only thought was that I thought you were crazy. And now it all kind of makes sense.
Sure.
So that's crazy.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure maybe we missed something and we might have to add to this later. But for now, I'm going to stake my claim on the theory that Noah's wife was assaulted by the youngest son.
That's crazy.
That's a crazy one.
It really is.
If you have any thoughts on that, let us know in the comments.
And how could you not have thoughts on that?
There's going to be thoughts.
Yeah.